Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Johnson, for your presence here today, for your service to this country. Let me just state for the record, I had the opportunity and the privilege to work under Mr. Johnson as a young attorney. I'm confident that skill and ability that he has obviously has served the country well in his prior capacity and will continue to serve the country well as you move forward as our Homeland Security Secretary. So we're thankful. I'm certainly thankful for that. Wanted to ask a few questions about immigration and whether our system is broken, and if so, how we might resolve it based on some of the things that you mentioned in your oral as well as in your written testimony. We've got about 11.4 million undocumented individuals in this country right now. Is that figure about correct?
Yes, that's what I understand the estimate to be. I've seen 11.5, 11.4, somewhere in there.
And now, what is the likelihood that these individuals in any significant number will self-deport?
I think the likelihood is next to zero that they will all self-deport. I think we have to be realistic about that situation. They're not going away.
And what's the feasibility that we as the United States government, Homeland Security, any apparatus that we have available can engage in mass deportation of such a significant number?
With any realistic, it can't be done. We have to accept the fact that we have 11.5 million undocumented immigrants in this country. We have to deal with them. I don't think we should allow them to continue to exist in a state of legal ambiguity or in a dark hole. I think from my Homeland Security perspective, I would rather deal with this population, encourage them to be held accountable, encourage them to pay taxes, get on the books, and get on an earned path to citizenship so that they go through the necessary background checks. They're in a position where they can work legally, and we reckon with this problem, which is why I'm a strong supporter of immigration reform. I think that we have to be realistic about the place we're in with respect to these 11.5 million people. There are states now where they're permitted to have driver's licenses. The California Supreme Court says that an undocumented immigrant in this country can practice law. So they're not going away. They're not going to self-deport. I would rather see us reckon with this population than to continue in the state of legal ambiguity we're in right now.
Well, I certainly take that position. I think most reasonable people would conclude, obviously, based on the fact that self-deportation is impractical, unlikely to occur, and mass deportation is impractical in terms of any execution. If we got 11.4 million plus undocumented individuals, we need to deal with them appropriately, but we need to address that situation. So I appreciate those observations. Now, you expressed concern earlier today and in your testimony that there's been a substantial increase in the number of unaccompanied minors who have been entering into this country. And it's my understanding that that phenomenon really began to occur sometime in the fall of 2011, and we've seen a significant increase in and around that moment. What are some of the factors, if any, that are leading to this substantial increase in those Central American countries we've experienced?
I think that the phenomenon is driven largely by the circumstances in those countries, in those Central American countries. The levels of violence, the levels of poverty, because when you look at, when I see these children and ask at McAllen Station, where are you from? They tell us Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala. And you just look at the situation in those countries and you have a readily available answer to your question. And so I want to try to work with these governments to stem this tide and to see what we can do to add to their own border security and deal with some of the underlying problems that are causing this phenomenon. But I think the principal reason we're seeing this is because of what's happening in the source countries.
Now, what can we do proactively to address not just the underlying violence, which seems to be a problem, as it relates to some of the drug cartels potentially being pushed out of Mexico into Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, in a manner that those countries weren't prepared to address, creating a chaotic situation. But also, there appears to be an absence of any meaningful child protective system in those countries, and then the absence of border security. I mean, is there opportunity here for us, through your leadership, through the leadership of others, for the United States, for Congress potentially to get behind assisting our Central American countries to our southern border beyond Mexico in a manner that could alleviate what I think is a humanitarian crisis that we have to deal with for those who actually...
I think, first of all, it requires a whole-of-government approach by our government, executive branch, and Congress, DHS, and other agencies of our government. And this is something I've had conversations about with my cabinet counterparts who all recognize and appreciate the problem. I think it requires a whole-of-government approach in Homeland Security, national security, and law enforcement. And I think it requires an engagement with the government of Mexico, because this problem is also their problem. People who migrate from Central America to the United States migrate through Mexico, and many of them stop there. And so I've had this conversation with the government of Mexico about doing more, and I believe that there is a recognition of the problem in our partnership with that government, and I believe that there is a mood and a climate to address the problem. I've had that conversation with the senior-most members of the Mexican government, and I think that they want to help, and I think my sense is that we are in a position right now to make some progress with the Mexican government on that issue.
Thank you. My time.